Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer of some 34 to 35 years experience. Now I'll go running on 35 years. And I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, what it means to you personally, and what it means for the coming week. By the way, if you would like a reading or if you'd like to contact me with questions or even to appear on this particular broadcast, please contact me at 508-525-0001. Again, that's 508-525-0001. And also, you can email me at Gary Gomes. G, that's my name, plus the letter G at gmail.com. I do charge for readings, and I do charge for lessons, but we can discuss that if you contact me. Okay. So, sorry, my voice is a little raspy today. I've had a slight cold for the past few days, and it's gradually working its way out. So, let's see now. So we've had an exciting week. Oh, by the way, before I go much further, please, if you're so inclined, hit the subscribe, like, and notification buttons on YouTube. That way you can be assured of not missing another spectacular week of this particular broadcast. And uh, I'll be looking forward to seeing you. We're close to 1,000 subscribers now, which in the YouTube world is not really breathtaking, but it's an important threshold for me as a person doing YouTube videos. So, any people you can talk to about that, or um, but any way you can actually do that would probably be good. Especially for me, I'd appreciate a small click for you, but uh, a big boost for me. Okay, so So I'm going to dive right into the charts this week, and it's one of the reasons I want to do that is because we have had an important event happen yesterday, and I'm trying to get the right chart up. So now this chart that I'm looking at right now, which you're not seeing, is the Liberation Day chart, which was the tariff announcement. And in retrospect, the tariffs were delayed for 3 months, and I don't know. So there were automatic tariffs that went into place right away, 10% tariffs across the board. But the really big activity is with China. And we can even look at this chart and see there were certain indications, which I didn't talk about, to be honest with you. Excuse me. And but the Jupiter Moon conjunction is still auspicious. That's still a good effort. Mars in the 12th house does indicate the negative implications of the tariff. Sun in the 8th house, in the same sun with Rahu, does indicate there would be fear created in the markets, and Mercury and Venus were retrograde, so that would have um, a dampening effect on the stock market, obviously. Um, I'm not saying obviously for those of you who don't, for those of you who don't know astrology, Mercury and Venus are the primary trade planets in Indian astrology. And also, when they try to modify the policy and say it was part of a deal, I've I've never seen so much adverse reaction, but I saw more adverse reaction from what I would call stock driven Republicans than at almost any time point in Trump's presidency, because basically the stock market Republicans did not want to see this go through, and they may have had good reasons for not wanting to see it go through, but they will be intensely critical of such a move. Also, it has destabilized uh, the international economy for at least 3 months, because most businesses like to work around a certain element of predictability. That's what markets tend to thrive on. Excuse me, I'm going to have a drink. This is just water, by the way. All right. Um, so that's why you're seeing a lot of the negative publicity. The Saturn Rahu conjunction is part of it as well, and that's actually getting closer. And so let's go to the now map and see what's happening right now. All right, so let me just see now. This is where the planets are right now. Mars is in the first house in that paradoxical situation where it creates uh, a Raj Yoga Karka for Cancer rising while at the same time being debilitated, which is pretty interesting. Mars is also exalted in an enemy sign, but that, if you think about it, this is a sign connected with mom, home life, um, emotional sensitivity. So Mars would not necessarily feel at home in this particular sign. Mars is an independent planet. It acts solitary fashion. It does defend our luck. It does defend our work. So that's why it's considered to be such an auspicious planet for this particular rising sign for Cancer. It's exalted in Capricorn. Capricorn is connected with material wealth, also with production, also with financial growth. So there's a certain element, even though Mars rules the 11th house, so it'll bring gain, and it rules the fourth house, so it'll bring status for a Capricorn rising. But Saturn is not its friend. Saturn and Mars are not friendly to each other at all. So you have that kind of a paradox where the moon is friendly towards Mars, but Mars is debilitated just because of its nature. It can't act fully or functionally. It will cause a lot of protests, though. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing so many protests around the world. It doesn't mean the protests are without reason or without cause. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that you'll see a lot of emotional sensitivity happening when Mars is in Cancer. And Mars has been in Gemini for the past few months. Mars is in Cancer right now. This is the 12th house of the president, the current president, and it'll enter his first house in around early July. So you'll see sort of what I would call a temporary downfall of the president. Not so what I mean by that is, even if he does have some accomplishments, he'll be criticized very, very strongly. Um, And this is also true for most governments and most militaries around the world. Okay. So I I think it's just a good idea to kind of prepare yourself so that um, the sun and the moon, it's a pink moon right now. The sun and the moon are almost opposite each other. They really won't be opposite each other. Let me see if I can pull it up. So opposite, so the moon in opposition to the sun is what we call in English a full moon. You know, so it's not really a this very advanced astronomical concept. But tomorrow it'll be a Purnima moon. It's also called a Purnima moon, so it's a very auspicious moon. Uh, Lunar placement starting on Monday, and that continues actually through um, the sun and lunar combination is actually between now and roughly April 28th to April 29th. Is gearing up towards one of the most auspicious days of the year, one of the best days of the year. And that is the sun and moon will both be exalted around the end of the month. So I think we have actually some, despite the Rahu Ketu conjunction, it's actually a good time to start things. It's actually a good time to start new activities, to start new ventures, especially especially around the end of the month. Okay, but you can complete efforts right now, especially if you've been having problems with people. Just try to get bad people out of your lives and try to eliminate them from influencing you. And Mercury will also be better placed. Also, one small observation, but it's an important one. For the first time, all of the non-nodal planets are direct for quite some time. So Mercury and Venus were the holdouts. And so you'll start to see things happening more directly than they have before over the next few months. So if there have been some delays and we have Jupiter at 23 degrees, 53 minutes. So I guess we can use um, the trade war between China and the United States as an indicator of war breaking out, but it's so far it's not there is no military involvement. The other thing we can look at is we have Sun is in conjunction with Venus. Venus is still very weak. Saturn is still very weak because it's really in the very early degrees of the sign. So that's going to give people a feeling of ungroundedness or instability for at least the next uh, month or so. Okay. And that feeling of ungroundedness or instability or uncertainty will certainly last through June because of the Saturn Rahu conjunction. Venus should renew our optimism over the next month or so. It should make things easier on a lot of countries. Mars will make more countries more aggressive, less willing to negotiate or less willing to deal. But I think overall, if you have this kind of a combination in the chart, the Gati Lagna is connected with K2, so that indicates a confused state about financial progress and success. Sri Lagna is connected with money or growth or financial growth. So actually, we should see some financial growth over the next few months, interestingly enough. If we switch over to China, let me see if I have China's chart in here. Hold on, I just want to take a small digression. I think I do. Let me check. Yeah, I do. I don't have a city, I don't know, but we'll put in Beijing. Oh, sorry. Uh, So this is just an approximate chart anyway, but all right, so China has, in fact, itself been in a recessionary environment and it's had an oversupply of homes in its chart. That's kind of indicated from this Mars up here, where Mars is weak in the Chinese chart. And this over the next 4 months, it'll be over the next I'm sorry, over the next 3 months or so. China looks like it'll have some really tough times in terms of regaining its economic steam. Um, it's also, I think, one of the things we're seeing is after May 23rd, the fifth house, Rahu's in the fifth house in this chart. It's in Pisces. We have so much planetary activity in Pisces right now, as you saw from the previous chart, that essentially China is in kind of a loss pattern right now. Um, it's in a Mercury Venus. Subperiod Venus is debilitated. You should see the economy recover a little bit next month, but I think given China's going to be in trouble for a few years, mainly because whatever financial advances it makes, um, there'll be setbacks because of that K2 in the 12th house. And I'm not saying that to be vicious. I'm just saying that's just what it indicates. Also, the government will be under increasing pressure over the next 2.5 years. So I'm not saying that you're going to see um, a change of administration happen in China, but just in terms of its financial growth potential, um, we're really talking about. Let's see what the moon looks like. Sunset. Venus is in the 12th house. Jesus. So, excuse my French. So you can see sort of not really an economic collapse, but an economic revolt in China over the next 5 months or so, between May 23rd and October 28th. October 28th, you should see some financial stability return, um, but it still looks awfully weak. Saturn's the best planet for economic recovery for China, and that subperiod will last between March 12th and August 26th of 2026. But it doesn't look like it's going to sustain itself. Um, I'm thinking between August 26th and March 17th, and especially between March 17th and January 23rd, almost even more restrictive government happening in China. So China's in for a good long struggle, at least the current government is. Um, but I'm not really seeing any kind of a collapse of the current government until really around 2030 or so. That looks the most likely to me, and that may not even happen. Um, a boost because Rahu is ruled by Jupiter, so it's really that part is really tough for me to read. But I think 2029, June of 2029 to June 21st of 2030 is going to be a pivotal point in China's history. Um, and I don't see this chart as being. It was lucky when during the Saturn Mahadasha. It was extremely lucky during the Saturn Mahadasha, which has already passed. Um, the Mercury major planetary period started in 2020, and that was essentially um, it was roughly coincidental with the outbreak of COVID, and Saturn Mahadashas tend to be hardworking Mahadashas. They tend to um, give good results. Um, but up until so you may see a change, or you may see a slippage in Chinese position of power after uh, I say around 2029. But there'll still be a power to be reckoned with. Don't get the wrong idea. But they'll start to. I think they've already stagnated to a certain extent, and I think they'll continue to stagnate over the next few years with a few bumps up. If we're looking at, so let's be fair and let's look at the U.S. chart, and then I'll get back to the main chart, and then go on to your uh, concerns. Okay. Days. Why isn't that? Why this isn't showing up? There we go. Okay, so this is a chart that I prefer to use for the United States. Um, the United States is in what's called the last 2.5 years of a Sati, or a 7.5 year period of Saturn. Now, this period is usually it usually indicates some growth, some expansion. Sometimes the growth's a little bit uncontrollable, which it will be between 2027 and roughly 2030. And we're still in a Rahu Mercury subperiod in the United States chart. So this is what I would call a lot of underground or behind the scenes activity. Um, After around June 30th, and also between February 9th and June 30th, a lot of panic because we have a Mercury Rahu conjunction in the eighth house and a lot of fear. Okay. The major thing to keep in mind is around June 30th all the way until March 27th, the chart shows an increase in reporting and protests and maybe even more of a protest environment after March of 2026. Now, a lot of this comes from a lot of what's happening right now in terms of protests is coming from Rahu and also panic. Okay, because um, there are people that are tampering with the existing order. So, and again, whether or not you agree with that is almost irrelevant. The panic will occur anyway. If you stay fixed, if you make changes, that's going to occur anyway. And people will find fault with one position or the other just in general terms. Um, so Rahu right now is positioned in our fourth house, is positioned in our third house. He'll be positioned in our third house after June, July, and that will lead us to more economic disruption, but also a lot of economic reform. Okay, because it'll start to expose a lot of the behind the scenes actors in the US economy. And this really isn't conspiracy theory. This is just more, a lot more people control financial interests, or a very few number of people control financial interests in the United States and globally, than I personally think is healthy, to be honest. Um, I'm not saying you should feel as I do, but I I do tend to get a little worried if 1% of the population controls such a large segment of the economy. And after June 30th, a lot more of that will be exposed, and a lot more of that will be exposed between March 27th to April 14th of 2027. April 14th of 2027 to April of 2030 should be kind of an economic boom period for the United States based upon previous charts I've looked at. So a couple of rough years, but a lot of innovation between 2026 and a lot of exploration and a lot of governmental reforms between March 27th of 2026 and April 14th of 2027. So let's go back to the now chart and look at your individual charts. So this is for so this week over the next 2 weeks, just in general, it's good for trying new things, for completing old tasks, for kind of wrapping up uh, unfinished business, and also for especially around the end of the month, starting new projects. Okay, so April 28th to April 29th, excellent time to start new projects. And let's see now. So for Aries, let's start with Aries. Aries has um, no planets in the sign. The Lord is in the fourth house, so people will be a little bit irritated or a little bit um, concerned. There is Mars aspects the moon, which is in Libra. So essentially, the moon in Libra is a relatively good placement. It's in Chitra Nakshatra right now, I believe. So that's, no, it's in Swati. It's in Swati. So that kind of scatters our energies and makes us look in a lot of different directions. But Jupiter's in the second house for Aries, so that will increase our financial resources. Mars is in the fourth house, so domestic life will be a little bit troubling over the next couple of months. Ketu's in the sixth house. Again, you have to watch out for illnesses or problems with health. Moon is in the seventh house, so there can be some change of feelings in relationship life, or relationship partner will seem a little bit moody, a little bit unfocused. Somewhat good for savings as Jupiter's direct and exalted. And at the end of the month, you'll actually find yourself being pulled out of a lot of financial dilemmas you thought you were in. For Taurus, Taurus has also one more thing I have to say is uh, we're entering what's called um, a Kala Amrita yoga. It's one of the Kala Sarpa yogas. So the moon is really going to be the only planet over the next few months that will be outside of this range. So that will kind of lock us into a pattern of one folk of um, dealing with the United States in particular, of dealing with other countries, but also just in general a lot of activities between belief and practicality. Okay, so a lot of people will be wanting to throw off practicality. They'll be wanting to focus on wealth and aspirational growth, especially after June. Okay, so that's something to watch out for, especially really until around August or September. Okay, so for Aries, that doesn't change Aries, but Aries will be focused on expenses and debts. Okay, over the next few months, and also on promoting yourself, especially over the next uh, 5 months or so, and also on financial gains. For Taurus, Taurus has Jupiter in the first house. Again, this is a good placement. The Lord of the first house is in the 11th house, gives access to financial gains, but they'll all be either spent on or accessed by friends. Mars is in the third house. This is generally difficult for water disasters for this sign, so people traveling should be really careful with this particular placement. And K2 is in 1, 2, 3, 4. K2 is in the fifth house, so children will be a little bit difficult to deal with, uh, and they'll seem confused about direction in life. Moon is in the sixth house, so again, you'll have to watch out for water-related injuries, maybe even congestive disorders, so like, colds and things like that. Um, the 11th house looks good though. This looks like a good time for this particular chart financially for Taurus. And that'll last at least this week, but it'll last for a few months. Again, some inability to draw resources in until around, I would say around the end of April, but you will. For for Gemini has a debilitated Mercury as its ruler, along with an exalted Venus, which offsets the debilitated Mercury. So this will give this sign some problems with financial growth, some problems with status, some fear about professional reputation, um, and sometimes people attempting to besmirch its reputation. That all that activity will be over by early May, and I. But again, have Mars in the second house. It's a little bit difficult because people will be a little bit angry and a little bit fearful. Moon is in the fifth house. Children will change a bit. They'll start to reestablish control of their lives, although they will still seem to be a little bit difficult to handle. And basically, career life does look good for Gemini, but again, there'll be a lot of worry about either delays in progress or about spirituality, about attempts to defame this particular sign. So just stay calm, stay cool, and ride it out. It won't last forever. As a matter of fact, a great deal of that will go away, and you'll have good financial gains in May. For Gemini, I'm sorry, for Cancer. Cancer has Mars in the first house, creates that peculiar Raj Yoga. So this should actually be a good month for Cancer or a good week for Cancer. It has the lords of the 10th house and the fifth house in the first house. So in terms of past life credit or past life efforts bearing fruit, you'll see a lot of that this month. But it will seem a little bit difficult, and it will seem like you have to be more aggressive than you normally like to be. K2's in the third house, and Moon is in the fourth house. So again, some changes in environment, maybe even for some of you, some moves. And we have a good cluster in the ninth house. We have certain combinations for wealth and financial prosperity in the ninth house. Um, Not without effort because of the Saturn Rahu conjunction, but they will come. And Jupiter's in the 11th house, which is very good for financial growth. For Leo, Leo has Sri Lagna in the first house. The Raj Yoga producing, or the best planet for this rising sign, is in the 12th house. So a lot of Leo's efforts will go towards expenditures in order to improve its financial position. And K2 in this particular house will tend to make it a little bit difficult to see whether or not this sign is actually functioning well. Mars is aspecting Moon, or whether or not this sign is actually communicating well, excuse me. Moon is in the fourth house, is in the third house in this chart. There's a strong desire not to antagonize people or to make people hate you. That combination is going to be present only for a couple of days. We'll move into Scorpio within 2 days, and that feeling of being not caring what people think about you will return. Let's see now. Jupiter's the fifth house lord. Jupiter is placed in the 10th house, so career, very good for career growth, very good for success in career. Venus, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, and Rahu, and also our friend Neptune are in the 8th house in this chart. So again, there are continued conspiracies or efforts to slow down this particular sign. That'll lessen within 2 days because the sun will actually move into its exalted sign, and within about 4 weeks, communications will improve and financial status will improve. But those elements trying to drag the sign down will persist for, to be honest with you, for a couple of years. So it's always good to know who your friends are and keep them close. And also understand that you do have people working against your best interests and trying to uh, hurt you to a certain extent or trying to slow you down. And you can compensate for that if you understand that maybe relationship partner, maybe enemies, but there is an indication that this sign is going to have to watch its back for the next couple of years. For Jupiter is very well placed in the chart for career, so career life should be very successful. Right, so let's move on to Virgo. Virgo has K2 in the first house. That's not necessarily a bad combination for Virgo. Makes this sign rather unexpectedly lucky. So you get some lucky breaks, but they always have some consequences or some difficulties connected with them. But at least from this chart, you'll start to see luck slowly improve over the next couple of days and dramatically improve within about. So that should be good for this particular sign and even more dramatically improve within about another 7 weeks. Moon is in the second house, good for financial gains, good for increased monetary status. Mars is in the 11th house, again, good for increased monetary status, strong desire for monetary protection. We have a bunch of planets in the 7th house, which essentially affects work relationships and long-term relationships. So we have that many planets in the 7th house. Essentially, you're going to gather some obstacles or enemies at work, but again, it's not as bad as it was before with Mercury and Venus retrograde. And like I said, within a couple of weeks, it'll be over. Jupiter's in the 9th house, very good placement. Jupiter's aspecting the first house, so that's good for this particular sign for financial luck. So again, we're not talking about winning the lottery, but overall, you should see some slow improvement. For Libra, Libra's very concerned about career this week. and Mars is aspecting the first house, so there's some concern about financial status and financial security. Um, the Lord of the first house, so is in the sixth house, so it does give this sign a very strong work ethic overall and an ability to overcome enemies, especially an ability and strong desire to overcome enemies, especially after late April. So you'll start to see this sign start to move more towards success goals and more towards um, engaging in activities that have put off for a long period of time. Jupiter's in the eighth. There's still a lot of self-study going on. That'll be there until our self-examination going on. That'll be there until late June, if I'm completely honest with you. Mars is in the 10th house. Career, you're going to have to be more aggressive than normal in career. And this sign tends to be sort of an action starting planet with not a lot of interest in causing fights, but it will engage in fights or disputes this week. Scorpio has Mars in the ninth house. Again, as I've said in previous discussions, this combination is considered to be difficult for um, Scorpio rising, but it's been my experience overall that it's actually lucky, and you actually will see increased gains from learning and from investigating more. You have a bunch of planets in the fifth house. That usually indicates good or bad past life karma. If Saturn and Rahu are there, it indicates some difficult past life karma. If Venus and Mercury are there, it indicates some help you're giving to people. So over the next month, try to capitalize on working with younger people and also with students or with women, and that will improve your luck. After that, start working with unconventional people or people who are um, very conservative and critical, and that will increase your luck for Scorpios. Jupiter's in the seventh house. Good potential for relationship partners, at least from this sign. K2's in the 11th house. Again, don't trust your friends. That'll be true really until around July. For Sagittarius, we have Jupiter in the sixth house, as it's been for the past several months. So this sign is very strongly focused on work, reform, and also with Mars in the eighth house, it's going to try to change things structurally. This is also true because we have a bunch of planets in the fourth house, so there's a rethinking of its position in the world and a rethinking of what it wants from life. So this should actually be a pretty good month in terms of making dreams realities. Sun will be in the fifth house within about a day, and that will increase your power, authority, ability to take charge. So again, this past month has been difficult for this particular sign. This past year has been difficult for this particular sun sign and rising sign and moon sign, but you'll get some relief starting on Monday and continuing in mid-June to early July. So this sign isn't stuck in place for that long. It's just stuck for the interim. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn in the third house, along with Venus, Mercury, Sun, and Rahu. So that's actually good for work-related life. This sign tends to always worry when it has this placement in the birth chart, and it's probably giving this sign a lot of worries about whether or not it will be able to achieve financial goals just because Venus is involved. And the second house, the Lord is in the third house. So this is a strong desire for money or financial breakthroughs, which is being frustrated by Saturn, being conjuncted by Rahu. Um, you'll see an end to that in June. Let's see, Mars is in the eighth house. So again, new relationships, stay out of new relationships. Um, Cancer's in the 10th house. Work life will seem very difficult, or um, people will be engaged, not really talking that much. So it's so communications is a problem for this particular sign this month as well. Work life, work doesn't get recognized. All this sign knows is it wants change, but it's not quite concrete about how much it wants it on the job. Moon is in the 11th house, good for financial gains from unseen sources. Capricorn has Saturn in the third house, along with Venus, Sun, Rahu. That's a good conjunction. I actually have some individuals who have that placement, and they're very hard workers. So essentially, they have a very strong sense of ethical responsibility at work. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter, so it's not really able to produce as much as it wants to right now. When Jupiter enters uh, the, the sixth house, the work will start to show rewards for the sign. But keep up what you're doing, because all this stuff you've been accumulating, this is Jupiter fifth house credit. Um, it'll pay off big time for you. We have Mars in the seventh house, some problems with relationship partners or coworkers, but again, relatively minor. K2's in the ninth house. There's some lack of direction around the business you're involved in. And let's see now. I think that's it for this particular sign. For Aquarius, Moon is in the 10th house. It can indicate a slight change or increase in work responsibilities. My apologies. So that's for Capricorn. Aquarius has a cluster of planets in the second house. Good for financial growth, but with some difficulty. Jupiter's in the fourth house. That gives this sign some help from home. Mars is in the sixth house, gives it a fighting spirit, which it needs from time to time. K2's in the eighth house. So essentially, but so essentially what you have here is a strong interest in metaphysical or spiritual pursuits, but also relationship partners will be a source of wealth, at least from this placement. Moon is in the ninth house, should indicate a change of luck over the next few days, especially career-wise. And let's see now. Yeah, so this actually looks like a relatively good week for Aquarius, and also for let's see now, for musicians. I'm sorry, not for musicians, for inventors or creators or people who are involved in in technology. It can also lead to innovations in the workplace. We have Venus, Mercury, Sun, Saturn, Rahu, and Pisces in the ninth house, leading to desire for institutional change, leading to, and that'll break through after about 2 days. You'll start to see that thirst for institutional change or changes start to come back again. And that'll continue really until the end of June, and June will focus more on work. But essentially, with all these planets clustered in this particular house, there's a lot of focus on relationships, luck, love affairs, occult studies, and also financial growth. So again, this sign is going to be very busy this month. Jupiter's in the third house, so we'll try to be diplomatic, we'll try to be understanding, but I think that this particular chart, if Mars is in the fifth, some difficulty with children being undisciplined or a bit unruly or unlucky. And K2's in the seventh, so relationship partners will seem critical or difficult to deal with. It is in the eighth house. As of right now, it changes signs every 2.5 days, folks, just so you know. Um, Moon in the eighth house, again, fascination or interest in mysticism or occult studies. That's a pretty common theme in this chart. There's at least half the signs have combinations for that. Um, and I think overall, spiritual life will be very important to Pisces over the next few weeks or so. But so will financial gains, and so will trying to study as much as they can. So that's the wrap up for the week. Let's go to the time and space chart and see where the difficult lies maybe. And reopen it. Okay, so let's try the time space chart again. All right, so this isn't okay, so let's do this. And all right, that's what I want to see. Okay. So we do have Mars running close to the Aleutian Islands, Alaska, and Hawaii, and that to me indicates some kind of land issues or housing issues, and also maybe even possibility for tsunamis or severe storms. Jupiter's running down through the Aleutian Islands, not really close to the United States on the West Coast, but this can give a little bit of a desire for um, investigating the West Coast a little bit more, especially the regions west of New Mexico, all the way into Nevada, Utah, and California. And because there have been some political scandals, especially in Montana, um, Utah, New Mexico, and down through Mexico itself. We have quite a few lines passing through North Dakota, South Dakota, all the way down through West Texas, and that indicates a lot of disruption in local government around that part of the country. So whether it's connected with a congressperson or with the governor or not, there'll be some kind of governmental uh, activity or investigation in that part of the country, both in the United States and Mexico. For there's a sun line passing through and a Mars line passing through Cuba, and Sun and Mars intersect right in Cuba, which indicates some difficulty with storms for that part of the world. Also, uh, governments will seem to be a little bit more out of control or a little bit more difficult, especially going through North Carolina, South Carolina, up through Ohio, and finally into Canada. Um, there is going to be an election in Canada relatively soon, and I still think the conservative candidate is going to win, but we'll see what happens. That's something that's so there was I was watching on the news. There was so they replaced Justin Trudeau with a man named Carney, I believe it was. And forgive me, I can never pronounce um, the Conservative Party leader's name. Uh, Poilievre, I think it is, but I could be screwing that off. And I apologize to him, and I apologize for my poor French. But I'm thinking this will cause, especially this part of Canada, will cause a disruption in the election. And the existing government will do well in this region, which is a populous region, but you'll see a change in um, in this region of Canada. And also, this particular moon line runs through New York City and um, down through New Jersey and down through Haiti and down into Venezuela and Bolivia and Argentina and Chile, excuse me. Argentina is affected just a little bit. So you will have some disruptions in the governments down there. Um, Maybe even some change of governments in that part of the world. There's a Mars line running through Bolivia, Paraguay, Uruguay, and it could influence Brazil as well. So there could be some political violence down there. I hope not. There's a Jupiter line running through Greenland, but the more important lines are running through Iceland, Venus, Saturn, Rahu are all running through Iceland, and through Ghana in Africa, and the west coast of Africa in particular. And I think one of the things you'll see is you will see some disruption or some governmental scandals come to the fore in those particular countries. There are no lines crossing England, no lines crossing France, um, but you have uh, essentially you have um, a Mars line starting here, encapsulated by a Saturn and Mercury line. So this part of Europe is not doing well financially. Okay, there are rebellions or demonstrations happening in England as well. And it looks interesting. I would look at Europe closely for the next few months because it looks really unstable to me, just in terms of um, what the population wants versus what the government wants, and especially Sweden and Poland. Uh, and this Mars line is touching the Ukraine. It's not quite in it, I don't believe, but I think particularly if these lines are clustered together, this does indicate some problems in Ukraine and also problems in Egypt, Algeria, Libya, and down through Central Africa, all the way down through South Africa. Um, the last line, some changes in government, maybe in Turkey, uh, maybe in Ukraine as well. Let's see now. And if the next big line we hit is a Jupiter line, which is crossing over India, is passing over all these Rahu, Saturn, Venus, Mercury lines. This can be an indication of governmental scandal, at least in India and Pakistan and Afghanistan and even in Russia. So I would watch those parts of the world really closely, because the justice system with Jupiter aspecting through all those lines, the justice system will be brought into a place to deal with them. With, let's see now, if we go over to the sun and the moon lines, which are over Vietnam and Myanmar, or which the place used to be called Burma. We know that Myanmar recently went through some earthquakes, and there are also some problems in terms of internal strife already. So I'm thinking that I'm just trying to think of the best way to put it. I'm thinking you'll see some disruptions to these governments over the next couple of months. Um, Myanmar in particular, although it's interesting, dictatorships like bureaucracies have a way of lingering on. But this moon line running through Cambodia and Philippines, that that essentially is trapped in there. And finally, let's get to the end of the chart. We have a Mars line going over Korea. We have a moon line. So we already spoke about the moon line. We have a Mars line going over Korea, close to Japan, close to Russia, some possible earthquake activity out there. And finally, we have a Venus Saturn Rahu line heading over the South Seas and coming close to New Zealand, which to me indicates some problems in the Philippines, Australia, and New Zealand in terms of governmental scandal and also in terms of popular unrest. So I'm seeing the West actually, or Europe actually, as a place of pretty severe unrest. I'll look at their chart next week for those of you who are curious about it. But I just think that uh, given their position on, or given the government's position on so many issues, a lot of English natives are getting kind of offended. And so that's it for me for this week. I love you all. Take good care of yourselves. I'll see you next week. And if there's anything you want me to cover in particular next week, please let me know. Thank you again for watching. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thank you very, very much. Bye bye now. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and like and comment. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing this time with me.